Hi, this is episode 16 of the second series of me trying to squat more weight than I've ever squatted before. More specifically, double body weight. So a couple of weeks ago I had a real kind of wobble and just felt I had no energy left and I couldn't train. And thankfully, last couple of weeks things have improved a little bit and back on track again. An ongoing issue has been some of this right hip pain and it's kind of flashed up a conversation that I get involved in because of my own research into the vertical split squat, this idea of unilateral versus bilateral training, which is better, and do you need to do one or the other, or is one on its own okay? So I'll go to the data in my squats in a minute, but through the wonderful folks up at our sports injury clinic, managed to get a couple of recent appointments in there and start to understand a little bit more about what was going on in around that hip joint. So I started off feeling hip flexor pain and discomfort, and then it became more like TFL, and now it's been more glute med. So it's basically all the muscles around the hip joint. So I had another couple of assessments up there, and the test they came up with, effectively it was the joint ligaments were a bit lax, and I had no stability in the joint. As a consequence of that, all those other muscles around it were overworked or working in the incorrect way. My hip joint mechanics probably need to be kind of brushed up to articulate that better. But basically it was just kind of like radiating out from that instability. Those tissues were being placed under unnecessary stress and therefore breaking down. So once I got to bilateral versus unilateral squatting, ultimately what the problem was is I don't have enough stability. So if I was to stand on one leg, I just try to balance on one leg, I would have much more movement than somebody who's got good stability. So that's it. I'm unstable. So how do you get stability? Well, it starts off actually not by single leg unilateral squatting with heavy load. It's like the most clear regression from that. I just be able to stand on one leg and build some proprioception and build up some strength. So proprioception is the ability to detect those changes in stability, and then the force capacity to be able to resist that change in body position. So that's the most simple regression of all those different single leg squats, is standing on one leg. Then you can move on one leg, and then you can move load on one leg, and that's the kind of linear path, but going very, 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 very basic. So actually single leg training with light load and high reps would, in theory, increase stability, increase my proprioception ability and increase stability. That would then give me less pain and less irritation generally, and therefore allow me to squat bilaterally better. So one feeds the other, and actually by aggressively loading back squat through instability, particularly my right hip, I've caused pain. So incorrectly loading bilateral training has caused pain that I can only fix through unilateral training. So that's probably one. I mean, not everybody has instability in one hip or both hips or anything like that. But that's just one example where the interaction between those two things is really important to understand, and be able to say to somebody only back squat and only unilateral squat. It's simply not the case. Sometimes you have to do a bit of a kind of investigative work to find out which one you actually need. So from a performance point of view, a bilateral squat might be the most important thing to do. But to allow you to do that well, you might have to invest in a period of unilateral training to develop the required stability skills and unilateral strength to then be able to tolerate training with heavy load bilaterally through the right range of movement better. So it's a bit of a kind of a jigsaw effect. There's lots of things happening, but ultimately I just got to address this hip stability issue, and as that improves, the muscles around it will relax off a little bit and allow more movement to take place and be under less pain when I do that, and everything just generally work a bit better. So more glute work and more proprioception work, standing on one leg, balancing kind of activities. So that's relatively easy to do. It will take a little bit of time to see dramatic improvement, but I've already seen a little bit of improvement already just in a few days. So that's kind of the journey, the kind of understanding the journey you're going to get through. That's my specific issue around this hip joint. So I'm getting there, definitely getting there with that one. But let's go back to some good old-fashioned velocity data, which is, as people in the office next door to me, Neil, will always say, I love some data. That's true, I do love a bit of data. So, let's make this slightly larger. I think last time I spoke to you, I was at 90 kilos or around 95 kilos. I had three missed goes. So around about the 15, 16, 17 rep range for those failed attempts. And then Friday, and then again today, I managed to achieve two successful consecutive sets at 95. And what's really kind of important to there was just a bit of a jump in velocity from day to day in terms of average velocity for the set. What was probably noticeable today was the gap between the fastest and the slowest repetition. The slowest repetition I'm less bothered about, but ultimately if I can move the same weight faster and faster and faster, that is the best indication of maximal strength. The slowest rep is probably an indicator of fatigue rather than strength. And yes, fatigue hampers my ability to finish the set, but I don't think it's a fantastic indicator of overall strength development. So I think if I look at the first 5 repetitions, the average velocity of the first 5 repetitions, I would probably argue that's a better indicator of strength development. But I go back to kind of the reason for doing this particular program is not solely chasing maximal strength development. It's about the robustness. Can I tolerate or use this program to better tolerate more intense forms of training a little bit later down the line near the end of the program? So hopefully with this kind of issue around the hip resolving, I'll be able to move through some more weight a little bit more comfortably. Less fight in the repetition, so kind of mentally knowing that I'm going to have to go through some discomfort and pain in the hip just to get through the set. Once that kind of alleviates, I feel I'm probably a bit more inclined to push a bit harder. Those kind of little things get a little bit easier as you go through. So the data is indicating some positives there. So if I hit 95 for 20 on Friday, just hopefully fingers crossed by anything major, I'll move on to 100. So if I go back into the data again, I just about got to the cusp of doing 100 back over the summer, and then the kind of the wheels fell off a little bit. I had a holiday, and then I got some kind of issues that I just couldn't squat properly. The velocities just weren't there. So that's going to be another kind of threshold moment in my training, is being able to do 100 for 20. And I promised myself once I've kind of gotten over that hurdle, I'll reintroduce load velocity profiling to see where I am in terms of my load estimations. So yeah, good news week this week. Great to have one of those. Need one every now and again, and hopefully more to come.